In my second year as Preston's executive assistant, he got engaged. His fiancée demanded he fire all his personal Omega staff, and especially me, a beta. Probably because I was the background photo on his phone. As compensation, he set me up on a blind date with his older brother. He's richer and more powerful than I am. He just has a kid. Want to meet him? I didn't mind, because that kid was mine. I dated Pierce once. Preston didn't know. If he did, he probably wouldn't have hired me, let alone secretly snapped a photo of my back to use as his wallpaper. When I was with Pierce, I was 20. Just a beta, fresh out of college, average and clumsy. Pierce had been doing a site visit at the grassroots level, and I mistook him for another down-on-his-luck job hunter like me. He looked a mess at the time, suit dusty, face grimy, a sheen of sweat on his forehead from the stifling heat. He was sitting on a roadside bench eating a boxed lunch, a thick stack of documents beside him. He looked destitute. I had just been rejected from a job and felt pretty low, so I bought 2 small cups of ice cream. To save money, I picked the random flavor option. When they arrived, I was pleasantly surprised to see they were both lime, my favorite. I handed him one. It's too hot out. Eating something cold helps the mood. I sat at the other end of the bench, feeling gloomy, letting my mind wander to what would happen if I never found a job. Would I end up sitting on the street, waiting for kind strangers to feed me? I shook my head, laughing at myself. I was so lost in thought that I didn't see the look on Pierce's face. Shock, disbelief, and then a flash of amusement. A simple conversation started. We chatted about our backgrounds and swapped names. That was the beginning of the mistake. I wrongly assumed he came from a humble background like mine, completely missing the priceless watch on his wrist and the bespoke tailoring of his suit. And Pierce seemed more than willing to play the game, pretending to be an average nobody. I started running into him frequently. Every time I thought it was a coincidence. When he confessed his feelings, I was surprised. I couldn't believe an alpha would fall for a totally unremarkable beta like me. He held me, whispering intimately in my ear, "I don't care. As long as we're happy." His hot breath turned my ears red. I nodded gently, accepting his confession. Back then, I naively thought it was fate. That is, until a melodramatic soap opera scene played out right in front of me. I was in a high-end department store, helping my boss pick out a gift for a VIP client. That's when I saw Pierce dropping serious cash. He was sitting on a velvet sofa, watching a young Omega woman try on clothes. The toe of his shoe tapped rhythmically against the floor, and his thumb rubbed against his index finger. His tell for when he was bored and impatient. Impatient, yet he waited there with practiced endurance for the girl to pick what she liked. Then, with a wave of his hand, he had his card run. Just the night before, he had been in our rental apartment, hugging me from behind, acting clingy and asking me to rub his head. He told me he was stressed and prone to headaches. For his sake, I had used my limited free time to learn massage therapy. He always said my technique was great, that the pain went away when I touched him. I thought we were truly in love. But in the end, that was just what I thought. I spent a long time thinking about whether to pretend I knew nothing and keep the illusion of our relationship alive, or expose him and demand a huge breakup fee. Ultimately, I chose neither. I picked the worst option. I exposed him, but I didn't ask for a dime. He wasn't surprised. He confessed his identity on the spot. Pierce Price, the eldest son of the ultra-wealthy Price dynasty. He played the role of the crown prince well. When we first met, he had been inspecting a key project for the Price Corporation. There had been an issue. In the sweltering summer heat, he had dragged a team of engineers and blueprints down to the construction site to overhaul the plan. When lunchtime hit, he sat by the road, eating while reviewing the meeting minutes. He just hadn't expected to run into me. I laughed at my own stupidity. I'd never seen real wealth, so I failed to recognize that nothing on Pierce, from head to toe, was cheap. Maybe it was just that he was too good-looking. One smile from him blinded me to the truth. He told me that who you love doesn't matter, only interests do. I suddenly remembered what he said when he first confessed. I don't care. See? He did care. I told myself he was just directing a play. He was the director controlling everything, and I was just the clueless actor following orders. He asked if I really wanted to break up. I was too young then. I thought love couldn't tolerate a single grain of sand. I simply said goodbye calmly, thinking silently that it would be best if we never met again. But things rarely go as planned. During a company-wide health check early that year, I found out I was pregnant. The reproductive cavity of a beta is small, and fertility is far lower than that of an omega. If I aborted this child, I might never be able to have kids again. After thinking it over, I scheduled the procedure and headed to the clinic. My cab was intercepted by Pierce's bodyguards. That was when I finally understood the extent of his power. Even from overseas, he knew my every move. Pierce flew back overnight. He wanted me to keep the baby. In exchange, he offered a generous sum of money. I agreed. To avoid forming any unnecessary attachment, I didn't even look at the girl after she was born. Pierce named her Penny. Penny as in a lucky coin. Precious. Pierce must have liked her. I left. My final condition before disappearing was a clean break, no surveillance. I really hated being an actor on his monitor. I left New York and headed to the West Coast. But I still couldn't escape the Price family. Pierce's younger brother, Preston, was the head of the Price Corporation's San Francisco branch. I had been shotgunning resumes and didn't even realize I'd applied for the assistant position under Preston. The interview went smoothly. Logically yet inexplicably, I became Preston's executive assistant. My duties included planning his schedule, organizing meeting minutes, occasionally fetching coffee, and hosting clients when the head secretary was out. The work wasn't too exhausting, and the pay was excellent. With the money Pierce had given me, I had already bought a condo. I could have lived comfortably on this job alone. But Preston's fiancée shattered that peace. Noah? Noah. Preston knocked on the desk, the crisp sound pulling me back to reality. It doesn't take that long to consider, does it? Or is there someone else you like? He was smiling, his eyes bright with curiosity and a hint of eagerness. I organized the files in my hand and passed him the schedule. I paused before speaking. Regarding the blind date with your brother, let's forget it. Preston stared into my eyes. His brows were curved in a smile, but I felt like a blade was trying to slice through my lowered eyelids to uncover my secrets. You keeping something from me? I fell silent, unsure how to start. Saying we dated felt too heavy. Family and friends never knew. It barely counted as a relationship. It was more like I helped Pierce rehearse a play. Your brother and I know each other. I didn't realize how strained my voice sounded, but Preston immediately noticed my mood shift. It seems you and my brother have some unpleasant history, but it doesn't matter. It's in the past. He paused, then added, I just hope I won't be like him. He breezed past the topic and started discussing other matters, until a knock came at the door. Mr. Price, Mr. Zhou is here. Preston nodded and straightened his lapels. I stood up to open the door for him. He handed me the file folder naturally. Go take a break. Your name won't be on the layoff list. It was a bit of a shame. I had planned to grab a severance package, but now I'd have to resign voluntarily. Preston's fiancée had become famous in the company because of these layoffs. I heard she was the daughter of a tech CEO, high status, and a temper to match. After the engagement, she demanded Preston fire his personal Omega staff, and she managed to cut quite a few employees from other departments too. I didn't plan to stay. First, I didn't want to be suspected by the future Mrs. Price. Second, my health really was taking a hit. Although the work wasn't physically heavy, being on call 24/7 was mentally draining. I had fallen into a freezing lake when I was a kid, and it left me with a chronic condition. One cold breeze and I couldn't stop coughing. My constitution wasn't great. I planned to resign and rest for a while. Conveniently, I had started an art social media account that was gaining traction. My savings plus. The income from that could sustain me for a long time. Back in the office, I ran into colleagues from other departments knocking on the secretary's door. Seeing me return, they looked at me with sympathy. When are you leaving, Noah? Let's grab dinner together. I pulled out my chair. Next month at the earliest. Gotta go through the process. Process? You have to wait to be fired? I'm resigning, I said. Mr. Price isn't planning to fire me. Does anyone have a resignation template? Send me one. Thank you for the opportunity. Due to personal reasons, decided to resign. I hit send on the email, pushed the keyboard away, and took a deep breath. Suddenly, I remembered something Preston once mentioned casually. My brother hates kids, but he takes great care of Penny. He must have really loved her mother. I actually never knew how Pierce truly felt about me. Back when I worked in New York, I lived in a rundown old apartment complex. The tenants were a mixed bag, and security was practically non-existent. That was where I experienced being stalked for the first time. It was a winter night. I had worked late and was walking home while light snow dusted the ground. I didn't realize someone was following me until I entered the complex. To get to my building, I had to pass through a dark alley with no cameras. I didn't know what the stalker wanted, so I waited under a streetlight where I knew a camera could see me. I wasn't wearing a scarf, and the icy wind drove snow down my neck. Took out my phone and called Pierce. I didn't know if it was the cold or fear, but my fingers were shaking uncontrollably. He answered quickly, his voice raspy with sleep. "What's wrong?" I lowered my voice, my throat already tickling, unable to suppress a cough. "Someone is following me." There was a pause on the other end, followed by the rustle of clothes as he sat up. He sounded completely awake now, his voice gentle and reassuring. "It's okay. Don't hang up. I'm coming to get you right now." I stayed on the line, listening to his breathing as he moved. Only when the call ended did I hear the chaotic sounds of a fight nearby. The police arrived quickly and took the stalker away. Pierce walked toward me, wiping blood from his knuckles. When he reached me, his shadow covered mine, and then his embrace enveloped me. His coat held his body heat, and the faint scent of tobacco mixed with his signature oud cologne washed over me. I had once asked Pierce what his pheromones smelled like. He said oud wood. As a beta, I couldn't smell Pierce's actual pheromones, so he bought a matching perfume to wear. He wore it specifically for me. He lowered his eyes and kissed the top of my head. He took off his scarf and wrapped it around my neck. It carried his warmth and scent, and the cold seemed to vanish instantly. We walked side by side through the dim alley. He interlaced his fingers with mine, then tucked both our hands into his coat pocket. His hot palm warmed my frozen fingertips. Looked at his profile in the dim light, feeling like this was safety. In that moment, I truly felt loved. But while he could drop a fortune on a whim, he never offered to help me move to a better apartment. Chewing over old memories is like chewing on sugarcane pulp that you refuse to spit out. The sweetness is long gone. Only the useless fiber remains. Just like Preston said, to Pierce, I was just someone from the past. When he talked about interests, I clearly understood the gap between us. Arrogance was in his bones. He looked down on me. Dating me was just a game for a man in his position. He probably loved me the way one loves a pretty pet. Even if he didn't want it anymore, he didn't want anyone else touching it. That was all. It was Friday. The earliest I'd get a reply to my resignation was Monday. Work was over. I pulled my thoughts back, tidied my desk, and slowly began removing traces of my presence. Preston called on Sunday. He must have just landed. The background noise was loud. "Noah, what are the personal reasons in your resignation?" "My health isn't great. I want to rest for a while." He paused, his voice turning serious. "You're sick? Since when? Have you seen a doctor?" "It's nothing serious. Just feeling run down lately." He was silent for a few seconds before speaking again. "That might be for the best. Don't worry about work for your last 2 weeks. Just take care of yourself. I'll authorize a bonus for you." "Okay. Thank you, Mr. Price. Oh, one more thing," he added after a beat. "My secretary, Ms. Wu, is busy next week. Pick out a gift a little girl would like and come with me to New York next Friday." A little girl. I dazed out for a moment. "Understood, Mr. Price." It was my first time entering the Price family estate. Laughter echoed from the main hall. I carried the gift box, following behind Preston. Preston's fiancée was sitting on the sofa. She gave me a very strange look. I lowered my eyes, avoiding her gaze, set down the gift, and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, I locked eyes with a little girl on the stairs. She looked about 4 or 5, wearing a yellow dress. The man behind her had his eyes lowered. No jacket. He wore a shirt with sleeve garters on his upper arms, sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. He held her collar lightly with 2 fingers, steadying her. My heart suddenly trembled. The little girl stared at me, then suddenly bolted down the stairs. An elderly woman on the sofa opened her arms with a smile. "Penny, come to Grandma." "Penny." It was Penny. I averted my gaze and started to walk away, but my leg was grabbed tight. Children's hands are warm. Pressed against my leg, the presence was impossible to ignore. She looked up at me and shouted with certainty, "Daddy." The room went dead silent. I instinctively looked up toward the man by the stairs. Pierce had lost weight. The fullness of youth had faded, leaving his skin tight against his face, highlighting a sharp, cold bone structure. He looked at me for a long time, then lowered his eyelids, put on a smile and walked over. He crouched down halfway and gently pried the girl's hands off my leg. He didn't dare use force. Penny held onto me for dear life. When he peeled her off, she stuck back on like an octopus. "Penny." Pierce deepened his tone. "Be good. Don't bother the gentleman." Penny paused, then called me daddy again. Pierce's face went cold. He picked her up without a word. "Apologies." He held the girl with one arm, his tone steady. "The child has never seen her father. She gets confused." I snapped out of it and nodded. "It's fine." Preston was staring right at me. His smile was gentle, yet he looked as if he was dissecting me. Pierce glanced at the gift box I brought. "Mr. Noah." He stopped me. "The child likes you. Could you please bring the gift and play with her for a while?" I looked at Preston. He gave a slight wave of his hand. "Go ahead." I sighed internally, picked up the gift, and followed Pierce. The hallway was silent. Sunlight filtered through the glass, cut into bizarre shapes on the floor. Penny rested her head on Pierce's shoulder, watching me without moving. "Planning to resign?" Pierce asked. I said yes. Voluntary resignation means no severance. "I know. You've been in the corporate world for years, and you're giving up money for pride?" "No," I said. He stopped and turned sideways to look at me. His forearms supported the child, muscles tensed in clear lines. "Since it's not to avoid the family, why resign?" "To rest. My health." His knuckles whitened as he gripped his hand. "You're sick?" I lowered my eyes, inexplicably thinking of that hour I spent waiting alone in the snow while being stalked, and that freezing rental in New York with no heating. I gave a muffled confirmation, my throat tickling. I wanted to cough again. "Old issue." Silence fell as we turned a few corners. He knelt to put the girl down, pointing to the playroom. "Daddy has business. Go play by yourself for a bit, okay?" Penny picked up the toy box and walked away, looking back at every step. The corridor was quiet. Pierce leaned back against the window. He pulled out a cigarette, patted his trousers several times, a frown of irritation forming between his brows. I took out my lighter and handed it to him. He looked at the lighter in my hand and froze. "You still have the habit of carrying—" "No," I interrupted. "Young Mr. Preston, always loses his lighter, so I carry one." I didn't smoke, but Pierce did occasionally. He hated carrying a lighter, so back then, I always kept one in my pocket. Summer nights, buzzing cicadas. We would walk aimlessly. I would childishly step on Pierce's shadow. Then we'd find a quiet corner. He'd hold a cigarette in his mouth, and I'd cup the blue flame, smiling as I lit it for him. He would look at me with bright eyes, then give me a kiss that tasted of oud wood and tobacco. Summer, heartbeat, noise. But that was the past. Pierce looked at me. He took the lighter but didn't light the cigarette. He tossed the unlit cigarette into the trash can and suddenly asked me a question. "Noah, I've always been curious. Why did you leave so decisively? Was it just because I lied about my background?" "There were many reasons. Seeing him with that Omega woman at the mall was just the fuse. What disappointed me wasn't his distraction, but the realization that he had never truly cared about me. For our second anniversary, I took $600 out of my small savings to buy Pierce a tie. I hesitated for a long time. Spending $600 on a tie was unimaginably poor value for me. But a watch would be too cheap at that price, and belts or shavers were too generic. I wanted something that would stay with him. He wore suits often. A good tie works for many occasions. I bought it, wrapped it with hope, and gave it to him. Pierce said he liked it. He used it that night to tie my wrists. It was tight but didn't hurt. Later, I never saw him wear it. The tie, along with its box, was tossed onto a shelf. I told myself he just didn't have an occasion important enough for it. After all, he didn't need a $600 tie for regular work. It would have been better if he really was broke. The moment I learned his identity, I understood. He looked down on my gift. With his status, wearing a tie I bought would probably make people ask if he was going bankrupt. It hurt. If the roles were reversed, if he lived in a dangerous neighborhood and was being stalked, I would have given him money. I would have told him to upgrade to a safer place. Even if my savings were low, I could have squeezed out $100 a month for him. But he didn't. He never mentioned it. He just told me to relax, that it wouldn't happen again. But who can guarantee that? I would rather he were poor, embarrassed that he couldn't help me. But the fact was, he had assets that could move mountains. He could drop thousands on a bag to humor a girl at the mall. But he never spent a dime on me. What was I supposed to think? I could only admit my own incompetence. 2 years didn't buy me a shred of sincerity. He was lying to me from start to finish. Pierce looked at me darkly. As he listened, his expression grew colder. So, in the end, you feel you spent money but got no return. You think I mistreated you materially. I asked, you seem to hate it when I mention money? He scoffed. Who likes it? I spoke softly. I was poor, Pierce. That money was my heart. I have endless money. Does spending it on someone mean I love them? With your wealth, giving money might not be love, I gave a mocking smile. But not giving it definitely means that person isn't worthy. The sneer froze on his lips. He stared at me for several seconds, his Adam's apple bobbing. I never thought of it that way. Doesn't matter, I shook my head. It's not important anymore. I nodded to him and turned to walk back. He took a few quick steps and grabbed my wrist silently. His grip was hard, painful. His breathing was heavy. He opened his mouth several times, his voice choked. Can we start over? I can give you anything. I found it genuinely funny. I looked back into his eyes. Pierce, why are you always so arrogant? As if you just have to toss out a few crumbs and I'll come running back. You don't know how to love someone as an equal. That play you acted out with me, weren't you just enjoying the feeling of being superior and in control? I coldly brushed his hand away. What makes you think I'd fall for a narcissistic psychopath again? I ignored him, dropped that final sentence and walked away. Just as I was leaving the estate, I ran into Serena, Preston's fiancée, standing in the courtyard. I tried to leave, but she reached out to block me, as if she had been waiting there specifically for me. She was beaming. She held out her phone. Mr. Noah, let's swap contacts. I didn't know what Ms. Serena wanted, but I added her. That night, a message popped up. Hello, Noah's Ark, followed by a cute cat sticker. Noah's Ark was my social media handle. My life wasn't particularly interesting. Painting was one of the few ways I managed my mood. I posted speed painting videos online, and over time, I'd accumulated a few 100,000 followers. I looked closely at the profile picture and realized the message was from Serena. I was shocked. We chatted a lot. I learned she was actually an early fan of mine. She loved my art style. She voluntarily revealed that her engagement to Preston was just for show. Preston already had someone he liked, and she didn't want to be a tool for a business merger. So they faked the engagement and planned to find a mild excuse to break it off later. As for the layoffs at Preston's company, the staff was bloated anyway. They just used her as the scapegoat. So, aren't you curious why I insisted Preston fire you? I thought about it and answered honestly, I don't know. Ugh, you're no fun. Yes, I ventured. My professional skills aren't up to par? Serena immediately got defensive. How can you say that about yourself? Please, you're capable and good-looking. She sounded so sure. I chuckled and shook my head. I'm not as good as you say. Yes, you are. You should be more confident. Then she pivoted to another topic. You know Preston likes you, right? I froze. I wasn't sure if he actually liked me or just found me pleasant to look at. A toy to tease. I really didn't dare bet on the sincerity of men in power. I didn't reply, just stayed silent. Serena continued, as a beta, you can't smell pheromones. But the first time I saw you, I smelled a hint of bergamot on you. Others might think it's cologne, but I guarantee you, that is absolutely Preston's pheromone. An S-Class Alpha doesn't release pheromones lightly. That jerk definitely likes you. I saw you on Pierce's phone wallpaper before, and then I saw you on Preston's wallpaper too. I was stunned, you know? You have no idea. When you walked out of the Price house today, the scent of oud wood and bergamot on you were practically fighting a war. I listened in silence, unsure of what I was thinking. Okay, the truth is, I put you on the layoff list partly because I wanted to see if Preston really liked you. But more importantly, I need an assistant. Serena's voice turned professional. You posted on your account that you wanted to travel the world, to go places for artistic inspiration. Well, my world tour needs a companion. If you're willing, you can fulfill your wish alongside your fan. I had said I wanted to travel the world. Back when I was dating Pierce, I used to hold his hand and dream about us traveling together once we had money. I told her I needed to think about it. Monday, business as usual. My final week. I wasn't assigned new work, just handing over tasks to colleagues. The New York headquarters sent people for an inspection. They were staying for 3 days. Pierce came too. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Come to the VIP lounge on the 46th floor, or I'm coming to find you. Pierce. I sat in my office chair, distracted. After a long while, I got up and entered the elevator. The doors dinged open. No one was there. I walked to the room, looked at the closed door, lowered my eyes, and knocked. The door opened a crack immediately. The lights were off. I stepped inside, reaching for the switch. Suddenly, an arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me into a hard chest and pinning me against the door. Pierce's palm pressed against my lower back, his scorching heat burning through my shirt. His breathing was hot and chaotic, burying his face in the side of my neck, sending shivers down my spine. I braced my arm against him, keeping half an arm's length between us. In the dim light, I saw his bloodshot eyes. I saw the empty inhibitor syringe on the floor. He was in a rut. I didn't need to guess to know I was probably drenched in his scent right now. My movement must have triggered him. His hand reached into my pocket and found the lighter. Remembering what I said earlier, he suddenly spoke. You like Preston? I didn't speak. His breathing grew ragged, his joints cracking. He gasped for air. He pinned my hands above my head. He lowered his head, trying to kiss me. I turned my head to the side. His breath grazed my cheek. I couldn't overpower an alpha. I knew struggling was likely futile, but before the kiss could land, his tears did. A tear fell onto my face, still holding the warmth of his eye socket. It landed suddenly, like silent lava erupting on a lonely island, burning a hole through my skin and into my bones. He let go of my hands. For a moment, the room was dead silent. I never expected him to cry. I suspected it was an illusion. In my memory, in 2 years of dating, Pierce had never cried. I turned back and saw his face wet with tears. I was stunned. I took a deep breath, not wanting to entangle myself with him any longer. I turned to leave. This time, he didn't grab my hand. He called my name, his voice choking. Noah. Happy birthday. Felt like a jagged cut across my heart. Humans are nostalgic creatures. Recalling every detail of a relationship during reunions and farewells is instinct. I stood rooted to the spot, unable to move. Countless images flooded my mind. I couldn't catch clear pictures, but the familiarity was overwhelming. The memories hit me with devastating force. 2 years of love, a cliff-edge breakup. I would have preferred we drifted apart after the passion faded with time. That way, the withdrawal wouldn't be so hard, like an addiction tormenting me late at night. I hated my soft heart. It was just happy birthday. Just happy birthday. I slowly crouched down, covering my face as tears spilled out messily. Footsteps approached slowly. He knelt and pulled me into his arms. I looked up at him, my fingers brushing his cheek, touching the tears at the corner of his eye. It was like touching a mirror. He took out a watch and tentatively tried to put it on my wrist. I didn't refuse. He adjusted the strap and clicked the clasp shut. Only then did he tentatively move his fingers to interlace them with mine. When palm met palm, his warmth transferred to my skin, as if the lifelines in our hands had finally reconnected. He forced a bitter smile, lowering his eyes, his lashes casting a small shadow. He clumsily rested his head against my neck, his voice muffled. Noah, my head hurts. In an instant, it was like the past again. I didn't speak. Silence and memories, both happy and painful, entangled me. He seemed to love me, yet he seemed not to love me at all. My thoughts were painfully chaotic. Pierce was already reaching out to wipe away my tears. He apologized, his voice trembling with a sob. I'm sorry. The past was my fault. I'll change. I'll change. I'll learn. He paused, then spoke with absolute gravity. Noah, I will learn. I want to start over with you as equals. Promise. I didn't give Pierce an answer that day. I just left in silence. When I walked out of the room, I saw Preston waiting in the hallway. He looked at me and smiled gently. The soundproofing is excellent. Don't worry. I didn't hear anything. I was just waiting for you. Preston led me to another room. He poured me a cup of tea. His smile was soft, but his words were direct. Penny's father is you, isn't it? I had just been crying. My eyes were red. He could have guessed, but I leaned towards him knowing everything already. I lowered my eyes, my voice muffled. Yes. Preston's voice was light and unhurried. Noah, I like you. Seriously. You can think about it. Since you've resigned, I don't need to worry about how an office romance affects you. I know my brother likes you too, but I'm still going to pursue you. Fair competition. What do you say? My work ended quickly, and I left the company. After thinking it over, I didn't want to get sucked into an emotional vortex. So I replied to Serena, agreeing to travel the world with her. Officially, I was her assistant, only needed to plan the itinerary. For 2 years, I traveled the globe. Serena dropped out halfway through to take over her branch company. My social media account pivoted from pure art to travel logs. As a travel influencer, I now had 6 million followers. From Florence, the capital of culture, to the romance of Paris. From Santorini in Greece to Santa Claus Village in Rovaniemi, Finland. The Blue Lagoon in Iceland, the Swiss Alps. I went to many places, and my mind had never been clearer. Shortly after the trip started, I gained 2 new contacts in my phone. I shared my travel stories with them, and they told me about their daily lives. Every major holiday, I received 3 gifts. Aside from Serena's, the other 2 were invariably from Pierce and Preston. I posted my travel plans on my account. For the final stop of the journey, I decided to return to the east, to go to Tibet and witness their faith. The people in the region have a unique devotion. They pray sincerely, embedding it into every detail of life. They always singing of freedom, of all living things, of faith. I climbed the sacred mountain. Unsurprisingly, I saw that person. He walked toward me with a smile. His first words upon our reunion were, "Noah, long time no see."